friend of mine for about 12 to 14 years. He's the editor of Saudi Gazette and the founder, actually, of NAM, and now, of course, board member, because Her Royal Highness Reem Al Faisal is the chairperson of this organization. It is my pleasure to welcome them here, because NAM has been engaged with raising awareness of some of the poverty and difficulties around the world, but civil society engaging in trying to get rights for people in many parts of the world. So it's not an organization just focusing in one particular area, but we're working with all communities and raising some of the very difficult civil rights issues around the world. Today, of course, the topic is about Jerusalem, Al-Quds. I can say from my own experience that I've been to Al-Quds, I've been to Jerusalem, I have seen East Jerusalem, and I have seen West Jerusalem. And those of you who have been there, whether in East Jerusalem you have Christians, Muslims, Palestinians, whoever, you will see the difference between East and West. And it is so great that we have the British civil society engaging with NAM to raise some of that awareness. I know NAM is traveling around all major cities, from Washington DC to Brussels and Strasbourg to many other major cities around the world, to raise awareness and to get people, civil society, to look at some of the real problems and issues in terms of getting rights for those who are oppressed, for those who are neglected, for those who are forgotten. And right now, in particular, when we see a lot of problems in the Arab world and this Arab awakening and the Arab Spring, there has been a shift of our thoughts and our concentration in terms of, we haven't really concentrated or sort of gone back to what is happening in Al-Quds, in Jerusalem and elsewhere, because this is a city that could be a city of all faiths and all communities. It's a city that is very important for Christians, Muslims, Jewish communities, as well as many others who are interested in faith, Abrahamic faith. And so therefore it is my great pleasure to welcome our guest from Paris, Baroness Hussein Ashe. Please come at the front. Come and sit next to Her Royal Highness.
Yes. NAM is an independent, non-government organization without any political or religious associations or agenda. NAM was founded purely to provide assistance to other non-profit organizations in order to help them accomplish their goals and serve their communities. We support critical actors in the promotion of values in the fields of human rights, cross-cultural communication, the environment, living standards, and fundamental issues of social development. Our mission is to assist other non-government organizations to accomplish their goals through the help of our volunteer workers and the funding of benefactors who also advocate societal development. Our passion is to help others build vibrant and effective civil society organizations. We help them determine their perspectives and develop their partnership building capabilities. In addition, we always make the most out of opportunities to develop programs in the various countries we operate in, and make special efforts both to understand the circumstances of these societies and to share this understanding. NAM is adaptable and versatile, an organization that is dedicated to helping societies that are about to undergo a significant change. We are dedicated to our cause and driven by our high aspirations for societal development. Therefore, we have equipped ourselves with the skills and expertise that we'll use successfully conducting our own activities to help others build their organizations. Our vision is to be instrumental in the development of civil organizations that will in turn promote positive societal change and the improvement of the social and physical environment, and one day achieve a responsible society. NAM therefore seeks to assist civil organizations to become better able to run their organizations successfully. Thus, we offer assistance in devising the programs and building the organizational infrastructure and systems that they will need to accomplish their goals in an efficient, effective, and timely manner. Through the maximum use of our skills and resources, we aspire to help others work towards the achievement of growth and harmony in their societies, such that one day all human hardships and conflicts may be alleviated, if not eliminated. NAM, always quoted, never labeled.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you. I've summarized a lot of reports, there's a lot of books written and a lot of, as Reem had said, the latest UN report. So I've just summarized it into a few pages that I hope you'll be patient and bear in mind to listen to it before we go into our discussion. East Jerusalem has traditionally served as the focus of political, commercial, religious and cultural life for the entire Palestinian population. And Palestinians from the remainder of the West Bank and Gaza Strip have been prevented from residing within the Israeli-defined municipality boundary other than through the increasingly restrictive process of family unification. Since the early 1990s, non-Jerusalem Palestinians have been compelled by the Israeli authorities to obtain permits just to access the city, including the places of worship during Ramadan and the Easter. The number of such permits granted is limited, and access of permit holders into East Jerusalem is restricted to 4 checkpoints, and it's an ordeal to go through these checkpoints. The majority of checkpoints leading into the Jerusalem area have been incorporated into the barrier, which is itself compounding the separation of East Jerusalem from the rest of the West Bank. In addition to this administrative and physical separation, the Palestinian Authority is not allowed under the Oslo Accords to operate in East Jerusalem, and the closure of Palestinian institutions such as the Orient House is continually renewed, notwithstanding Israel's commitments under the roadmap. This led to a political and institutional vacuum, which, in addition to restrictive residency and access policies, is resulting in East Jerusalem becoming increasingly separated from the remainder of the occupied Palestinian territory, physically, politically, socially, and culturally. Pending a final status agreement, East Jerusalem remains an integral part of the occupied Palestinian territory, and the Palestinian population of the territory should have the right to access East Jerusalem, including for specialized health and education, work, social, cultural, and family relationships, and for worship at the Muslim and Christian holy places. Therefore, while there is a need to focus on the issues facing the Palestinian residents of East Jerusalem, there are other major concerns. The residency status of Palestinians in East Jerusalem. Following the war of 1967, the government of Israel unilaterally annexed some 70 kilometers of the occupied area to Israel, which included East Jerusalem as defined under Jordanian rule, as well as 64 square kilometers of surrounding West Bank territory. The annexed area was substantially added to the municipality of Jerusalem. The right to reside in East Jerusalem was restricted to those Palestinians who were recorded as living within this expanded municipal boundary. However, East Jerusalem Palestinians were defined as permanent residents of Israel rather than citizens. and their residency status is conditioned on their proving that their center of life lies within the Israeli-defined municipal boundary or in Israel proper. Extended stays by Jerusalem Palestinians outside of the city or Israel, including in the remainder of the occupied Palestinian territory, can result in the revocation of their Jerusalem ID cards. Approximately 14,000 East Jerusalem Palestinians have had their residency revoked since 1967, of which over 4,500 were revoked in 2008. Permanent residency status is not automatically transferred through marriage. So, a Palestinian resident of East Jerusalem who wishes to reside in the city with a spouse from the remainder of the occupied Palestinian territory must apply for family unification. The application process for family reunification for residents of East Jerusalem is arduous and has become virtually impossible since 2003, when Israel introduced the nationality and entry into Israel law, or the temporary order. Permanent residency status is also not passed on to the holder's children by right, resulting in difficulties in registering the children of such mixed residency status marriages. Since 1967, Israel has failed to provide Palestinian residents of East Jerusalem with the necessary planning framework to meet their basic housing and infrastructure needs. Only 13% of the annexed municipal area is currently zoned by the Israeli authorities for Palestinian construction, much of which is already built up. It is only within this area that the Palestinians can apply for building permits, but the number of permits granted per year to Palestinians does not begin to meet the existing demand of housing, and the requirements related to formal land registration prevent many from applying. As a result, Palestinian residents of East Jerusalem find themselves confronting a serious shortage in housing and other basic infrastructure. Many residents have been left with no choice than other to build structures illegally and therefore risk demolition and displacement. The Jerusalem Local Outline Plan 2000, which is a master plan, instead of providing a solution to the housing crisis, appears designed to preserving a demographic majority of Jewish residents vis-à-vis Palestinians in the city. Since 1967, the government of Israel has constructed settlements within the extended municipal boundary of East Jerusalem and in the wider metropolitan area beyond, despite the prohibition under international law on the transfer of civilians to occupied territory. Over 1/3 of the area within the extended boundary of East Jerusalem has been expropriated for the construction and expansion of Israeli settlements. The territory expropriated for settlement building and expansion has resulted in a corresponding reduction in the land and resources available for Palestinian construction and development. In addition, settler organizations are targeting land and property to create an inner layer of settlements within Palestinian residential areas in the so-called Holy Basin area. The impact of this settlement activity in Palestinian areas includes restrictions on public space, residential growth and freedom of movement. In the most severe cases in the Old City, Silwan, and most recently in Sheikh Jarrah, settler expropriation has resulted in the loss of property and the eviction of the long-term Palestinian residents. Archaeological activity in these areas is augmenting the public space which the settlers control. A government-sponsored open spaces project will expand this domain and further constrain Palestinian construction and space in East Jerusalem. An additional declared intention of these settler groups is to thwart a negotiated resolution to the question of Jerusalem by preventing any potential redivision of the city. In the summer of 2002, the government of Israel approved construction of a barrier with the stated purpose of deterring suicide bombers in the West Bank from entering Israel. Construction of the barrier in the Greater Jerusalem area is effectively redrawing the geographical East Jerusalem city. I will leave Khalid with more statistics and details of the situation, but as you can see, the division and the Israeli apartheid rule in the area is really devastating, evicting settlers, evicting people from their homes, and with no hope of a better future, either for housing, for hospital aid, for living in dignity. So I think it's important that we really need to focus on the humanitarian impact of what is happening rather than view it as a political issue. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's very nice to be here in this scenic view and talk about a city that is undergoing through a lot. Before I go ahead, I would like to state that I have been one of the advocates for peace in the Middle East, for a two-state solution with defined boundaries for everyone, respecting all rights. Unfortunately, after 1967, these things could not take place because of intransigence, because of also mismanagement, because the narratives of both parties to this conflict were not on the same level. And this has also caused a lot of problems for us. Now, it's easy for somebody to come and criticize this party or that party, but I'm talking about facts. Jerusalem, a city of peace, equally important to Jews, Christians and Muslims, has today become a city of annexation, land confiscation, settlements, demolition of Palestinian homes and residency. And this is not just being propaganda from any part of the Middle East or because I'm an Arab or not. This is what has been described in the latest United Nations report on Palestine. I truly believe that in order to have peace in the Middle East and to start the Middle East peace map and the road map that goes, we recognize the fact that occupation is the root cause of what is happening. In 1967, after the June War, there were two resolutions, 242 and 338, and for the first time the United States took a stand and did not veto among the resolutions that it has been doing against the interests of the Palestinian people. So this was a resolution that was binding upon all parties, returning to the 1967 borders, peace, recognition. This was followed over the years through many, the Gunnar-Yaring plan, other plans and all, but nothing came to light until the Oslo Accords, where Arafat had to give in to pressure and accept so many things that he did not want to do so. However, I think there has to be two sides that need to address the situation. The Arabs in 2002 and King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia offered to the 2002 Arab Peace Plan, very clear, no ambiguity, no beating around the bush, land for peace, returning back to the 1967 borders, total recognition, and 22 Israeli embassies will next day start functioning in the Arab world. So it was not something that was trying to pull the wool over people's eyes or gain some public acceptance in the United States or force. It was a genuine call for peace. I truly believe that if Shimon Peres was and then the Prime Minister of Israel, things would have moved ahead. Sharon answered King Abdullah the next day by getting in through Ramallah, through the other areas, and trying to capture Mr. Arafat. So I truly believe, and without going into a lot of statistics because these are available, the dehumanization of the Palestinian people, where pregnant women are forced to give birth at roadblocks, where you have to go 29 miles to go around the wall to go to a school, this causes resentment. This is also used by those people in the Arab world to create hatred, to create and tell the people like us who are opting for peace, look at your friends in the West. Of course, the main culprit here is the United States, because the United States has 80 to 85 resolutions concerning the basic human rights for the Palestinian kids, and they vetoed it. Now Britain, people talk about Britain. I'm not going to talk about the Sykes-Picot Agreement or the Balfour Agreement. All this is history. And believe me, 80% of the people in the Arab world, or those who have not read history, would not know these resolutions. So there is no cause for resentment against Britain. But I truly believe that we should not let a major problem in the world be left-handed to the Americans. I think Britain and the United Kingdom and the EU should rise up and try to solve this problem, because this is one of the root causes of problems, of violence, of hatred against the West. We don't hate. Mr. Bush was wrong when he said they hate us. I remember in the 1960s when the Soviets had these friendship houses across Asia, which was the equivalent of the USIS, United States Information Service, and were pumping rubles in those days for Arabs, Muslims, Indians, Pakistanis and others to go and study in the Soviet Union or the University of Leningrad and Stalingrad. People wanted to go to America because they believed in the American dream. There were certain things that we had in common. But the resentment, the hatred, the dislike happens when you see, not on Al Jazeera or Al Arabiya or Saudi TV. You see it on the BBC. You see it in France 24. You even see it hear it in NPR. Total destruction of a people. Deliberate, wanton thing, dehumanizing them, creating things for them. So this is the issue. Now Jerusalem, as I said, is very important. And this is why I think we all should strive in our own ways to see to it that some kind of commitment be done by the Israelis, not to please the people of Jerusalem, but to honor international agreements, to see to it that what is written, what is signed, should be done. At the same time, I think it's very important from Jerusalem, the peace process should start. The roadmap should be reactivated, otherwise I really believe that there is going to be more violence to come. Not from the Palestinians itself, but from outside. We spoke about the Arab Spring. Now the Arab Spring in many ways is going to be hijacked by extremists if we do not try to solve legitimate problems that exist in the Arab world. We are not going to blame the Israeli occupation for everything. The Arab world has suffered enough. And I remember in 1967 a paragraph in the Daily Telegraph which said, "The Arab world," and I'm quoting, "despite its brimming coffers, lacks one thing which money can't buy: leadership." Yes, there have been many problems that we were the cause of, but at the same time, those problems should not condone occupation. And I'm sure everyone in this room, if I ask them to put their hands up if they are for occupation, I will not see any hands going up, because we're all against occupation. We're all against suppression, be it in Myanmar, be it in Africa, be it in Asia, be it in the Arab world. And this is what we have been striving to do. So I think any peace process that does not take into consideration the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people, to see that the sufferings that they are going through be addressed and quickly, and every day these things are happening, there will be no peace in the Middle East. And when there's no peace in the Middle East, unfortunately, there will be no peace in the world for many reasons. And we are not just a gas station for the world. There are people there who are human beings who want to live in peace, who want to live like their counterparts in other parts of the world. But to strip them of humanity, to make them feel that they are just statistics, I think will in the long way be harmful to all of the people in this world. The Kuwait crisis affected everyone. We have other issues in the Middle East that we need to address. But I do believe, and I'm not naive when I say it, that the root cause of all these problems is occupation. And unless we try to redress this, It doesn't mean, by the way, there are no other problems. The Arab world has suffered from mismanagement, has suffered from dictators, has suffered from oppression by leaders against their own people. And I'm being very frank about it, because this is our policy to address all these things with clarity. But at the same time, I do not want, and people do not want, and as a concerned citizen, that this festering problem that has been there for years be also resulting in something that will cause more problems. So I truly believe that we should all strive to see that the equal rights of both the Israelis and the Palestinians be addressed immediately. The Arab world, again, a few weeks ago, put forward the Abdullah Peace Plan, recognition, land for peace, but it was met with disdain by the Israelis. But Jerusalem as a city is dying, and we as Jews, Christians and Muslims should not allow the city to die, and let it be the center for hope and peace in the Middle East. Thank you.
Thank you, Khalid. Now I think we've got a few minutes for questions before lunch arrives. So Mrs. Fatani, Khalid and Her Royal Highness are here to answer your questions. If you want to make brief comments also, I just want, whilst you're still thinking about questions, I just want to share my own experience. I started talking about being in Jerusalem, and Robin Marsh was here somewhere. I went with Robin and a very large international community, World Federation for Peace, and we met with the Speaker of the Knesset, we met with the leader of Palestinians, Yasser Arafat, of course, and then we gathered in many hundreds in Jerusalem to talk about peace. And actually, when you see, Mrs. Fatani was talking about Salvan. I've actually been in Salvan with Lord Hilton and Baroness Tong, and we've actually met with people who have been evicted from their homes. If you look at the poverty, they talked about development rules, but there are all the occupied areas. If you go in there, families that have expanded now. There are now children and grandchildren. They cannot get permission to build extension for their houses. They have to obtain permission to repair and to get extensions for their houses. And it's sadly, you see this. I've been in South Africa. The apartheid was even worse, but you see the difference straight away from East Jerusalem to West Jerusalem, and the difference it has made. So thank you to NAM for bringing this to our attention, and so creating this little discussion here in the House of Lords. And now I will ask from my colleagues, Baroness Uddin first, and then you, sir. Baroness Uddin. Speak up.
Your Royal Highness, Samar and Khalid, it's very good to hear the analysis that you put forward. There's been quite a number of debates on Palestine issue in the House, and on the latest one, in which a number of us took part, we were told by the British government in no uncertain terms that the windows to two-state solutions almost closing or closed. Khalid has made a very open contribution and very frank one, a frank analysis. Can I ask a frank question? Gas station of the world is a very pertinent point, I think, and given that West has always ruled many of its colonial countries by sanctions, why aren't Muslim world, who have the oil, negotiating the peace in Palestine and demanding that Israel be accountable using some form of oil sanctions? I've asked these questions and I've had kind of pretty much doors shut straight away, but we are having an open discussion today. I'd love to hear your opinion.
Sorry.
May I?
Oh, sorry. Before.
Yeah, I think I just need to elaborate further that we have gone through two wars. with Israel, and it had very strong support from the United States and the world powers. So we're not fighting Israel alone. It's not a matter of putting the sanctions on Israel, unless there is a political will by the international community or the superpowers of the world to find a solution to this problem. I don't think it is within the Arab world, in the hands of the Arab world, to end the problem.
Sir.
Hello, my name's Adam. Welcome to NAM and raising all these issues. I've grown up over 50 years seeing these issues all over that we're talking about now, and it's half a decade of my whole life of seeing it and hearing it from different angles. But over the years I've grown to look at things slightly differently, and being a disabled person, the disabled community knows no barriers when it comes to the needs and requirements of anybody, regardless of their faith, political leanings, personal views or anything like that. Has not anybody thought of a joint body from all of the parties as a fundamental initial step towards partnership, working in all the areas? Because a disabled community need to be able to do everything in all walks of lives. You're looking at your physical, your mobility issues, your sensory issues, and if you built sensory gardens or something akin to that, this would transcend the restrictions that are being put everywhere. It would break down divisions, and it would in effect become a joint occupation of the territory of all of the people from both sides, all four sides, all five sides, however many different people there are. And then that then leads to a growth within the wider general communities of embracement. That's all we're going to say there.
Thank you. You want to respond? Or?
Yeah. Well, I think in my presentation I gave you details of how systematically it's the policies of the Israeli government not to want a settlement, not to want to give peace a chance. It's a systematic demographic change that is taking place in order to take full control of the whole of Jerusalem. The divide, the settlements, the barriers, and all these restrictions that are put, evicting people from their homes, dividing families, not allowing for any reunifications, not giving any permits, and at the end demolishing all houses. So it's a policy that is being implemented. Unfortunately, I wish the Arab world can can give support to end the Palestinian issue, but it's not only the Arab world, it's an international community, because Israel is being backed by superpowers and the international community. So the Arabs alone will not be able to do anything. And even if we want to use the oil as a problem, we're not fighting Israel alone. It has to be a political will of the international community.
Thank you. We've got about 5 minutes. Of course. Yes. Lady sandwich.
Caroline Montague. I'd like to ask Mr. Maina, when he talked about the Arab Spring being hijacked by fanatics, what sort of fanatics are you talking about? Are they both Muslim Brotherhood or jihadis? What are you on about? And are they going to be the same types of fanatics in the different countries of the Arab Spring? And what impact is this going to have on the Palestine-Israeli issue?
Well, I was not labeling anyone. I mean, I don't think so personally. No, the Muslim Brotherhood are not fanatics vis-a-vis what you have been seeing around with other movements that have come. What I'm saying is whenever there's a gap, some people step in because they want to sound leaders. Like, for example, I was having a debate with the Soviet ambassador in 1990 and the Iraqi, and I said the road to Jerusalem does not go through Kuwait. What I am referring to, that people will hijack the present situation in the Arab world, and the people who do that usually are people with extreme views. And this is what I said, because we are in a state of flux going on. And this is that's why, if there is peace in one area, nobody else will come in Egypt or other places and say, look, these people are not doing, the new governments are not doing, we're going to take over. So this is my main aim. It was not meant against anyone, but the extremism in both sides. The gentleman said something very relevant, that if there are NGOs, organizations, they can transcend across. In America, there's something called the J Street. The J Street people are people who are anti-APEC. It's all Jewish members. They have been vilified. They have been threatened. They have been even physically assaulted for just asking for peace in the Middle East. The same on the Arab side. I mean, until a few years ago, nobody would have said that I would like to have peace with Israel. And Sadat died, and others, you know. So what I'm saying, the ground is there. I would love that Arab societies, Palestinian societies, and other organizations in Israel get together. And there are, by the way, the reform movement is there. But by and large, Israel is taking a very, and I'm talking about the Israeli government, are taking a very extremist stand. You have Israeli writers, members of the Knesset like Yuri Avnery and other people, Mark Brozonsky, who they threatened to burn Avnery's house, and he's a member of the Knesset. So there is that. But I think we should. The Arabs have now left nothing except to, grovel in mortification and say we want peace. But peace needs partners and needs somebody across the table. Unfortunately, no one is there.
Thank you, Baroness Hussein Rashid.
Thank you very much for the presentation, which was very interesting and all too depressingly familiar. I mean, those of us in Parliament, and even in my short time, have heard the questions on this issue come up time and again, and debates time and again. And many members in the House are always asking questions, and unfortunately we do seem to hear the same replies that are not very, don't take us very further forward. I think, just to take it a step further, I think what's been said is that I think when the Arab Spring, we all look forward to it, I think there were great expectations, expecting some of these Arab countries who had suffered years of dictatorship and repression. I think there was a great expectation that overnight they would become model democracies comparable to ours, and here we are sitting in the mother of Parliament, and it's taking a very long time to get to where we are, not a couple of years. Best part of 1,000 years to get to where we are. So, democracy takes time to develop and to bed down. I think we need to bear that in mind. But I'm interested in what's happening. My own background is I'm from a Turkish background. I'm the only person from a Turkish background in Parliament. And Turkey now is taking a much more robust role, if you like, in that region, in the Middle East, in terms of Palestine. And they're newly rekindled, if I can put it that way, rapprochement with the Israeli government is I see that as being quite key because of the influence they have, and obviously Israel realises it does need a friend in the region rather than alienating everybody. So I just wanted to ask really whether you have links with what Turkey is trying to do, and I know there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes in the way, so in Turkey as well, and working perhaps with Egypt. If Egypt, once Egypt becomes much more settled down, and if it gets to a position, those two countries are significant countries in the region and could work very well to try and put pressure on the United States and the EU to try and bring peace, democracy and human rights to the Palestinians. And I just wondered what your views were in trying to talk about regional powers rather than always, we're banging on the door of the United States, which is not going to change anytime soon. But there are other levers that I think can be pulled. Thank you.
Well, I would agree with you, because this is what I was leading to, is saying that for years we thought that the United States would play the role of an honest broker. No, it's not honest, because you talk to congressmen. I've been to the State Department, to Congress, met lawmakers. You see, they, as they say in America, have a double speak. They will tell you something after they leave Congress. Their presidents come to the Gulf and give lectures and go back richer by $500,000. But when they are in office, they have a constituency that they have to look at. I truly believe that the peace will evolve when parties from the region get together. You spoke about Turkey. Yes, Turkey has clout with Israel. Egypt has had agreements. Other countries can come in and speak about, and Saudi Arabia did come in. There were two peace plans, by the way. One was a forgotten peace plan with a Fahd 8-point peace plan about 25 years ago. Then the other was 2002. But as I said, peace means partners, and I think the Israelis should realize. And you see, are victims of their own propaganda, surrounded by hostile neighbors. And I said, what hostile neighbors? Egypt has relationship with you, diplomatic relations with Jordan, Mauritania, Morocco, Qatar, the little mini empire of the Gulf, and all these countries are having. So there is, you see, we have to get out and break that psychological barrier that Sadat did. And as I said before, had Shamir been there in 2000, had Shimon Peres been there in 2002, there would have been peace. But then what has happened? We have to have a partner for peace. I'm all with you when you said the United States can never be a partner. This is why I said that maybe the UK and the EU could play a guiding role, not necessarily be the main partners, but they could help set up a conducive environment so that things will happen. If the EU can just feebly criticize what is happening, it will help. It's not being done, but I really believe that now the onus is on the Israelis, because so many overtures have been done to them. And only last month, I really expected the Israelis to rise up to the occasion, because they're also suffering. They also suffer in the sense that anybody can blast or kill himself, blowing another 10 kids going to school in Tel Aviv. Human life, whether it is Israeli or Palestinian, is not cheap. It's very important to know. It is important that as they care about their kids, the Palestinians too care about their kids. And I hope that Turkey, as an emerging state, Egypt, if once everything calms down there, other countries in the region, the Gulf states, will be able to get together now, because we have nothing to hide. People want peace. This idea of Arabs trying to throw Israel in the sea is old rhetoric. Just as you'll never see a Soviet Prime Minister banging his shoe on a table at the United Nations. But the Israelis are victims of the past, and this they have to get out. And I'm not saying this myself. I've been hearing this from many Israelis who would love to go up and one day visit Arab countries without let or hindrance. The chance was given to them by King Abdullah 2002. And it was normalization with 22 Arab countries. And accept resolutions 242 and 338. As simple as that. Recognition, solid boundaries, security for all. These were written in Arabic, English, French and German, and presented to the Israelis. The answer was shocking. Thank you.
Your Royal Highness, Mrs. Fatani, Khalid, my lords, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, may I conclude this now? Lunch is ready, but before we do that, can I say thank you very much to all of you for joining us this lunchtime. I want to say thank you especially to Earl Errol, Lord Errol at the back, Helene Martin G, who has done fantastic work with Sheila and all their team. Can I ask you to put your hands together for a round of applause? But also thank you. What I'm going to ask is if you now move to the tables, we will ask our guests to move round, sort of split up on different tables, and then they'll move round to each table so you can have informal conversation over lunch as well. Lunch is being served within the next 5 minutes, but please move to the tables, and thank you very much for coming.